Welcome to Frank Fridays. I am the CEO of Art Frankly, and it is my pleasure to introduce you to Ellie Hayworth, my Frank Friday collaborator. Ellie is the founder of Hayworth Communications Consultancy. Hayworth is committed to promoting intrepid ideas in both art and design, and Ellie has grown her business to command a full scope of client services, including public relations, business strategy, speaking engagements, content development, you name it, Ellie can help you. And today we are sitting down with Colleen Cash. Colleen is an experienced business leader and creative strategist with experience in both brick and mortar and digital institutions. Currently, Colleen is serving as the Vice President of Auctions at Artnet, and she recently led the team to record success on their digitally native auction platform, closing more than 70 auctions with double-digit annual growth. Prior to joining Artnet, Colleen held positions at Christie's, Apollo Global Management, and LaGuardia Gateway Partners, the consortium managing the $4 billion redevelopment of LaGuardia's Terminal B. A lot of us have not been able to see that yet, but I am very excited, at least to say, to finally visit LaGuardia. So Ellie, over to you.
Amazing. Thank you, Carlina. And Colleen, I'm very excited to chat with you today. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Absolutely. I am delighted to be here with you, though from afar.
Well, thank you. Colleen, when we first spoke with you for your Frank Talk some time ago, we were talking a little bit about kind of the professional evolution in the art world. You had started your career, among other places, at Christie's, which, as everyone knows, is, at the helm of the duopoly, if you will, in the brick and mortar art world, in the auction house sector. You are now the VP of Auctions at Artnet. And so I'm curious just to hear a little bit about, how these roles may be different or what synergies you see across the evolution there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I started in the auction world, I really, truly believed I would be a brick and mortar lifer. I mean, I joined Christie's in 2014 at the height of the post-war and contemporary boom, right? I was in the room when Koons's Balloon Dog sold for 139 million. You lose track of the sums at some point. And, I had a really fortunate career path there where I started out in the client advisory group. I was multi-category. I got to work across sales, across specialist departments. And I later went into decorative arts, which really taught me everything I know about auction, right? So, I mean, in that way, starting at one of the biggest institutions was just a world-class education. You learn the auction vernacular, you learn the language, you learn the ins and outs, you learn shipping, conditioning, and authenticity. Even on the business side, which was where I was, you learn the auctions business writ large. And so much of that was the basis for my success in my current role at Artnet. But between those two roles, like a bird from the nest, I needed to test my wings and see if my skill set was transferable. And fun fact, it is, and it was. And anyone who feels like, they've started an art career, can you pivot elsewhere? You absolutely can, right? Client management, financial management, innovation, creative thinking, those are transferable across skill sets. But certainly having that underpinning of just traditional auction experience has certainly paved the way for me in my current role at Artnet, right? So we are an online platform founded 30 years ago with the price database, later to expand into news and a gallery platform and online proprietary auctions. And really, in some way, we are but a little auction house within the Artnet sort of brand. So much of what I've learned, even from sale budgeting to sale titles and scheduling, is really rooted in what I learned in Christie's. And we were doing this on a global in-person scale. We still do handle artwork. We still do provenance and traditional condition reports and all of those things that our clients across these institutions sort of rely on as they transact in this space. It's a much smaller organization though, and I really appreciated that opportunity to work in a 5,000 person organization, 120 person organization, very different feeling. In a lot of ways, a bit more nimble. It's simply a smaller ship to steer. So definitely, you know, having both experiences has made me a better professional. And I always urge anyone when they're looking at their career to think not just about what the role might be, but how the organization is structured around them. So for me, you know, having huge organization experience, coming to a smaller shop was something I wanted to add to my resume. And it's been a really wonderful and exciting ride thus far.
That sounds all incredible. And I think one of the most meaningful things that comes out of both your response to this question, as well as an initial response from your Frank talk, is the idea of relationships. And, you know, you mentioned certainly the size, and certainly Christie's is quite a large company in comparison to Artnet. One of the things that you said was so meaningful for you in the art world is this relationship both with, you know, the client, but actually with all of the individuals that bring the auction to fruition. So you have the art handlers, the shippers, as you say, you know, the evaluations team. So I'm just curious, you know, how have those relationships evolved, or how have they changed from your time at Christie's to now working at a digital native platform?
Absolutely. I mean, I think one thing that's true of our business is it takes a village.
It does.
in any setting, whether it's online, brick and mortar, it really takes a village. And, you know, back at Christie's, success really hinged on, okay, who can, everything's urgent, everything's a top client. Who can I call to help me get this work on the wall, to get it lit, to get the wall painted? You know, in that setting, it was very much a physical thing. And you really needed to rely on colleagues who had expertise in those areas. And it's no different in our current world, especially in 2020. I mean, if the past year has taught us anything, it is just that teamwork is the end all be all.
Absolutely.
Right? And trying to accomplish processes and systems and tasks that you used to do in person when you could scream over desks or walk down the hall.
Absolutely.
Right? Having to learn to communicate over phone, Slack, email, text, WhatsApp with your clients and vendors alike has been an education, and it has just confirmed the fact that good relationships are the basis of success. So, you know, it's funny too, though, how small an industry we really are at the end of the day. When I call on vendors I used to work with at Christie's all the time for the work I do.
Absolutely.
So I think it's also a matter of, it's always cultivating new relationships, and it's keeping those existing relationships warm and up to date and at the forefront, because, you know, those Rolodexes, to use an antiquated term, are so helpful. And
absolutely,
that people are really altruistic and want to help and want to get involved in it, or involved, especially in this new landscape we're in.
Yeah, no, I think that all makes perfect sense. And I think, you know, one of the key takeaways from your Frank talk that I found so compelling, you know, and by the way, Colleen, speaking with you today, I see this ring true. You appreciate, you know, you have a background, at least an interest in theater and the pageantry. I think, you know, auctions, certainly at, you know, the major auction houses, there was a certain level of pageantry and theatricality. But with Artnet being, you know, a digital native platform, and with all of us experiencing this kind of renaissance of what experience and what, you know, theatrics, if you will, or the experience can be in a digital setting, I'm curious to hear how your role presently in Artnet, how you feel you're uniquely poised to respond to the changing market needs these days.
Sure, absolutely. And look, there's nothing more theatrical than an evening sale. From the audience and what everyone's wearing and where they went to dinner before, to the rostrum and the turning of the artworks, to the white gloves of the art handlers. I mean, that is a performance. We just have to right. It has production level, you know, staffing behind it. And the online world, it's funny because we have a task at hand to really try to bring the drama to the surface, because auction gamified things, right? And in my world, you know, theater world, the idea is to bring the audience to catharsis, and that is a release, you know, a release of whether it's repressed or deeply or buried emotions to the surface vis-a-vis the artistic experience you're sort of going through with the maker of the art. And
absolutely,
in some way, when you look at auction, it's almost anti-cathartic. It's building up of emotion, and you're in the game. It's either, you know, who you're in pursuit, you're competing in pursuit. And yet I think there's something really cathartic in that. And what I love about thinking of sort of the mentality of an auction buyer and bidder, and this is really what we do at Artnet, it's, you know, how do you get someone to online, right? In a sale room, you put your paddle up and bid for any number of, You could be swept up in the emotion of it all. You could be thinking, wow, it's a really great price. Let me get in here. It's what an opportunity. How do we get someone to click, bid? That's a different
Absolutely.
feel as theatrical. But we really have done a good job at Artnet, and a lot of it starts at a coding level of how do you gamify the auction a bit, and we do that in terms of extending lots when bids come in within just a few seconds of the lots close. And we also have a series of email alerts and content that comes out around the sale and strategically around the sale close to sort of create that groundswell that you would feel in an auction room. So we're the only players in the space who have always been doing it this way. We've been doing it now for 12 years. So we have some pretty good experience. And we also have a team of digitally native specialists whose entire job is sort of to help create the drama from their workstations while the auction is closing. And certainly for the team, especially in this past year, we've enjoyed the drama of a great sale and bidding wars from afar. And, we're slacking each other. Can you believe this lot is still extending? And, that it's fun. You actually almost like it crescendos. And as these lots extend, there's a greater crescendo, and then the next lot is sort of held up, and that cadence that's created by the activity is one that's really been exciting for us as a staff and our clients as well.
I there are so many points that you've just raised that I find very meaningful and important, but I think there is something to be said about how we both, as a savvy audience and a savvy collector, are looking to consume different types of content and are looking, if not expecting, a certain level of kind of that client relationship that extends even on a digital screen. And I think with Artnet, you certainly have a very astute level of sophistication, as well as you've created an experience. And so it's really exciting to hear how you've translated something that is very traditional and very kind of analog in a lot of ways into an experience that people can feel. And I think there's something kind of, I don't know, personally exciting to even think that the team is sitting behind closed doors all together, essentially, by way of the virtual world, celebrating all of these wins that are very present for the Artnet community. So I don't know. I find all of that very compelling, and it certainly makes the art world a very personable place, even from behind a screen.
Absolutely.
I think, Colleen, I found this to be very fascinating in your original Frank Talk. You spoke a bit about, originally you were looking to potentially go into the sciences. And I actually have a deep-seated love of neuroscience and neuroplasticity and behavioral sciences, which frankly, I think speaks very clearly to what we were just talking about. How do you incentivize someone to feel the sense of urgency and excitement around bidding? You mentioned the idea of your brain on art, and I really love that idea. Can you unpack a little bit about what this kind of gravitas about the art world that just keeps sucking you back in?
Totally. So, as we sort of discussed in theater, the ultimate goal is catharsis. And sure. I think the fine art world, absolutely. I mean, you go to the Met, if you've ever been to the Frick and you see one of Rembrandt's self-portrait and the eyes following you, I mean, that's an emotional experience.
Absolutely.
And what I love, again, is that idea of you go into a sale, no intention of buying. Maybe you're just walking through Rock Center or the Upper East Side, you walk into Christie, Sotheby's, wherever, and the next thing you know, your hand is in the air. And what has happened, right? How did you go from being passive to all of a sudden you're in the game? Or, there was a great example of one single owner sale I was working on at Christie's, where we actually had sort of the divorcee in the sale room, and she was buying her stuff back. And
she wanted it.
She wanted it. She, things got split up, and here it was for sale, and you could not bid against.
Sure.
Bitter. I mean, and the emotion behind that I find absolutely fascinating. And I have a great uncle who recently passed away, but he was an absolute collector's collector.
Sure.
Everything you could collect, he would collect. And he collected most significantly pulp art, which were the original oil paintings of the spicy magazines back in the 30s.
Interesting.
Very interesting. And I mean, he created the category. He would go to dumpsters and garage sales because this was considered illustration art. So it wasn't anything the artists were proud of. They did it to make a living. Yet he saw in it a sort of a category that they at the time couldn't even acknowledge themselves.
Sure. And a market.
And pathology, I use the word pathology of a collector, is something I find, to your point, just thrilling. And it's an intellectual curiosity of mine. And I think when you look at the online world, again, and trying to create that swell that engages people and ultimately gets them into the market itself, how can we create sort of online art discovery, using data even to surface artworks that speak to the behavioral patterns we're seeing of people in their browsing? You know, that's what I find really interesting. And again, the brain on art, it's what, as a consumer of it, I love it. I'm staring at it. Why am I now bidding on it? And I love unpacking those reasons, because it's not just investment value. It's the deepest recesses. There's something going on there. And I love that in our industry.
No, and I think, I mean, a true collector, it's like a visceral reaction when they see something. I certainly am not collecting on par with some of these blue chip masters and, the paddlers over at the Christie's and the Sotheby's of the world, but I am a burgeoning collector. And, my terminology is always, it's a gut punch reaction. It's like, when can I not walk away from something without knowing that it will live with me? And it is that kind of visceral reaction. So I very much relate to the idea of the brain on art, because I think my brain is always on art. And I'm very pleased to hear that there is a kindred spirit out there.
Yeah, totally.
I love it. So Colleen, it would be great to hear, just from a professional practice standpoint, what does your day-to-day look like, and how has it changed or evolved now that we are doing, more remote work, and our teams are, whether they're siloed or interconnected? Just tell me a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like.
Totally. It looks like a lot of this. I mean, this has become the norm. It is Zoom meetings, Google Hangouts from sun up to sundown, more.
Sure.
Artnet auctions was in a really interesting position when the pandemic hit, because we had just brought on an amazing head of contemporary art. We had sort of a new management structure. All of our teams were locked and loaded. And then boom, we stopped seeing each other in person, which was really an interesting thing. We are so fortunate to have such a high octane team, though, that everyone really kicked into gear. And a lot of my day is really speaking with the leaders on my team and, ameliorating problems, looking forward to future strategy. We have a whole sort of post-sale team that does our sale operations, and a business team as well. So in any given day, I'm budgeting, I'm forecasting 3 years ahead. We're looking at our current sales. We're looking at new strategic partners. We're over a lot of things, though we're Zoom again from day in, day out.
Sure.
These sorts of conversations, even with clients, is really effective. And we're also looking to the future and thinking, what does our business look like when we can do a hybrid in-person model safely?
Sure.
And, how can we compound on the record-setting success we had in the last year when, this sort of digital inflection point finally hit one of the slowest moving industries?
Yes, absolutely.
And for us, we were poised for it. Our operations were actually fit for the operation. And yet, we have a huge drive and ambition to continue to innovate and curate in what is a new era for the art market, with, a need for more varied voices in every aspect.
Absolutely.
We really want to be at the forefront of that and bring great offerings to the market for both our sellers and our buyers.
No, I certainly agree that the past year has catalyzed a lot of change. Much of it is for the better. And so it's exciting to hear that, there's some kind of optimistic forecasting for the future here.
I think so. I'm an eternal optimist. So I think
as am I.
Yeah, there's a lot of good on our horizon, I think.
I agree with that statement. Colleen, what do you read? What news are you consuming? How are you kind of navigating the media landscape to inform yourself on all things art, but also all things beyond?
Totally. So this was interesting for me. I've never much been a consumer of sort of video news. And
Sure.
This specifically, with the influx of video calls, I have so learned to value sort of silence and really choosing what I consume, because I think this year, with everything going on geopolitically, health-wise,
Sure.
and in our industry, news was coming at us from everywhere, and everything is now a news source, isn't it?
That is true.
Clubhouse, Facebook, your phone sends you news things. I mean, Artnet news, it's everywhere. So for me, I'm a big reader of news. I read through things quickly. That's how I consume. You know, I actually start every morning with a great podcast by Monocle 24 called The Globalist. And what I love about that is it really helps sort of show me what's going on with the world writ large. It's, you know, it's based out of London, but Monocle's based out of Switzerland, I believe. So it has a really global focus. And because so much of our client base is global, I find that understanding those current events and what's going on really helps understand how our business sort of needs to be run that day. I mean, if there's something going on, you know, with fiscal policy in whatever country, that affects our clients. So I like to know about that. So I do that every morning. You know, I read a little bit of everything. I'm really a believer in the true story lies, you know, when many different viewpoints come together and you
absolutely
can see the path forward. I love the Times. I read the Wall Street Journal. Of course, I have to give a plug to Artnet News. They are my top saved.
I'll give a plug to the Artnet News team as well. I work with them quite often. I have to say, it's comprised of some stellar minds.
So true. And when we were back in the office, the Artnet auctions team sort of formed an L with news. So we miss them.
Oh, I love it.
We miss them dearly, but they are amazing, you know, on the beat, on the money all the time. I still actually get a weekend subscription to the Times. There's something about sinking in on Sunday.
The physical.
With the physical, I really like that. And I think what we've also found, I was listening to this on a podcast yesterday, newsprint isn't so much for news anymore as it is for commentary. Because we all know we're going to get the news from Twitter or from our Apple alerts. I mean, that's news. Those are the sound bites. But when you want to go deeper into a topic and understand it from different perspectives, I think reading that hard copy sometimes is just can't be beat.
No, I'm in full agreement with that. And as someone who's steeped in the media at all hours really of the day, I think, you know, one of the things I certainly, you know, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I sneakily made a note of The Globalist.
It's great. I recommend.
I'm very happy to become a subscriber. So I think there is something about being a discerning media consumer. And, you know, having a constellation of news sources is very important. So it's great to hear where you're getting a lot of your information. Colleen, we love to kind of round out our conversations with hearing, maybe you can just leave us with one or two best practices and one positive takeaway from the past year.
Totally. So best practices, I mean, look, this is a year and my team has onboarded new members remotely. And I think it's a year that's, and maybe even going forward with work from home being a more meaningful reality, where for the more junior employees or teams, or for, you know, young art world professionals, just remember that networking doesn't have to stop when we're not in together. I think that's so important. You know, I have found the generosity of spirit of colleagues and of others in the space this year has been on full display with virtual coffees, you know, webinar sessions with Q&As. You know, there's so much content with real people who are willing to continue the conversation. So I think that that's important. You know, I even think in my Frank talk, I said, you know, knock on doors, be loud, ask for information. And I think that remains a best practice. Still stands in this digital age. And I think, you know, in terms of sort of a positive outlook or something to think about going forward, for me, and I think I remember I was talking to Karline maybe early in the lockdown and the pandemic, where I was really trying to exist in a space of understanding what did I want to take back to the world with me that I had learned period, as opposed to sort of leaving behind. And for me, I think that's an idea that stillness does not equal stagnancy. And for so many of us, especially in our industry, where, I mean, the fairs, the openings, it was a rat race, especially in New York and in some of the metropolitan cities. I mean, it was just on to the next and on to the next. And this idea that, again, stillness does not equal stagnancy, and stillness can be an incubator for great business ideas, for great strategies, for the next step. Just because you don't have those traditional markers of moving forward doesn't mean you aren't. And to sort of honor that is something I've learned in the last year, and something I'm really looking forward to bringing ahead into, you know, a hybrid and fully reopened world.
No, absolutely. And I think even those just kind of moments of pause or those inflection points they're fodder for, you know, some creative thinking. They're also time to regroup. And, you know, I think there is something to be said about you know, I like this idea that, you know, silence and stillness are not stagnancy. And, you know, you could still be doing very meaningful work. It may be more introspective, or it may be, you know, it may be happening in a more kind of personal way, but that's something that you may be just charging your batteries to come back at it with, you know, with a vengeance.
Exactly.
So, no, I love that. I mean, Colleen, I think, first of all, I share your energy. You're an ebullient speaker, and you're very astute. And I just have really enjoyed speaking with you today. So this has been a lot of fun.
Likewise, it's always great to connect with eager and engaged minds, and love art frankly. And Ellie, what a pleasure.
Thank you so much.